Hey everyone, it is that time of year where we talk about all the books we read over the year and how our reading years went. I have my top 10 books for you today of the year, and we're just going to go ahead and get started. These are not in any particular order. Last four-ish I think are probably solidly my top four of the year, and the rest are just randomly placed. I'm upstairs because all the kids are home. My husband's home for the week, so the house is a little crazy at the moment. You might hear some things in the background, we'll see. Dogs, kids, husbands, all those good things. Go ahead and get started because who knows how long I'll be able to do this for. The first one I picked up and put on this list is What Hunger by Katherine Dang. I really enjoyed this one. This is a sort of coming of age story with feminine rage in it. It follows a girl named Ronnie, and she's in high school, or just about to go into high school, and something tragic happens in her family, and then she ends up getting assaulted at a party as well before going to high school, and she starts getting this hunger for something, and it is about her dealing with that. But that is not the main reason that this is on this list. There are lots of stories like this. Some of them work for me, some of them don't. The reason I think this one worked for me so much was that we really get to know her and her family pretty closely and their experience as immigrants to this country. Character development I felt was really well done when even towards the beginning of the story, when the tragic thing happens, I felt it, and that isn't always the case with books. Sometimes I feel very detached from things going on, and I just felt very attached to Ronnie. And I think also just having a girl child of mine who is 11 now, and she's coming into those ages where she's going through puberty and she's changing and all that stuff, and looking back at my own experiences, I definitely can identify with these girls that they're growing up and they're realizing that the world is harder maybe than they realized, and that being a girl, especially an immigrant girl, is challenging, and there are certain truths and sad realities in life that you have to deal with. So I thought this was really well done. In the end, we got some information about her mom and her background, and her having things that have happened with her during war and before she immigrated. And I just thought this was really well done. I don't think enough people are picking it up. I think some people are picking it up and not liking it as much because it's a very light on the horror aspects of this. This is really more about Ronnie and her experiences, and I really enjoyed it. Next, I have Bury Your Bones in the Midnight Soil. This is the Fairy Loot edition that I picked up on Pango because I liked it so much that I wanted to have both the regular copies and the Fairy Loot. So this is by B. Schwab. Lots of people have spoken about this. I've spoken about this as toxic lesbian vampires, and it is. But I would say that the lesbian vampire equivalent of sort of Interview the Vampire by Anne Rice, if you've read that, I really enjoyed it. We get to see these three different lesbian vampires as they go through the changes of being a vampire. Well, two of them, we get to see that, how they deal with each other and their relationships to each other. And while I don't think this was perfect, and I understand some of the criticisms that have been leading people to DNF or to rate this lower than maybe they thought they would have, I just loved it. I love the atmosphere, I love the writing, and it took me on a voyage in my mind, which I just really enjoyed, and I just loved it. I am always looking for a vampire story that resonates with me. I love it, and I love the discussion of, as you're aging and getting older as an immortal, you're losing your humanity, and there's only so much that you can do in life, and they have companions, but they're not the same, and companions that they fall in love with that don't want to be immortal because they see what it's doing to the ones they love. And yeah, I really liked it, and it ended up on my list. So another one of my favorites of this year, another fantasy, is The Night and the Moth by Rachel Gillig. This follows a diviner and a knight, and the diviners in this story, there's 9 of them, I believe, and they are kept cloistered away in this convent-like place, and they wear all those thingies, blindfolds, sort of, but they're not, blindfolds over their eyes so you can't see them. And they are pretty brutally treated to get visions of things. And a king comes by towards the end of their service and wants his future divined, or whatever you want to call it. And there is a knight with him that our main character ends up clashing with, and he's, you know, grumpy and he doesn't like the diviners and she doesn't understand why. They end up having to go on this journey together because all the diviners other than her one by one disappear, and she wants to know what happened to her sister diviners. So they go on this journey to find out the truth, and she slowly learns why he doesn't like diviners and why he doesn't like the whole omen or system. And I really enjoyed this one. There is a cute sentient gargoyle named Bartholomew, who I absolutely love. To actually have a Bartholomew, oh, it's a gargoyle, a squishmallow, but I call him Bartholomew, so that's how much I like this book, and it's one of my favorites of the year. Last soul fantasy on this list is Catabasis by R.F. Kuang. I wasn't sure about this book when I first picked it up. I thought I would like it because the premise sounded really cool, going into hell, academics, dark academia, all that stuff. But I had read Babel, and that was a little too academic for me. I still enjoyed it, but I definitely trudged through parts of that book, and I thought it could have been cut down, and I liked the themes of it, but I did have trouble with it. And then I read Yellowface, really enjoyed that. So I thought this one is a premise that I could get behind, so let's try it out. And I really enjoyed this one. There is, you know, talk of it being really academic like Babel. I would say it's way more approachable than Babel. I had a lot of fun with it. It definitely doesn't take itself so seriously. It's about these academics who need to go into hell because their advisor died, and they need those recommendation letters to, you know, get into a program or get a position at a university, because academia is cutthroat and they're about to graduate. They want to get their doctorates, so they're doctoral candidates, and if they don't have these things, then all their work would be for naught. So, you know, even though that is very dangerous and they might never come back, they travel into hell to go after this professor to get their recommendation letters. So it sounds silly, and it is pretty silly, but I really enjoyed it. I liked the themes of sexism in here, and that the main character really likes to think that, you know, that as long as she's good as the men, you know, the only thing wrong with sexism is there, you know, there's no sexism anymore as long as you're as good as they are. And then she discovers that, you know, that's not the case still, and that she has, you know, the success that she does built off the back of these women who did fight for those rights. And that's just a small part of it. But I did end up really enjoying this. I tabbed a whole bunch, and that's what happens with my 5 stars. It's not necessarily the most perfect reads. It's not necessarily the reads that I would recommend to everyone, but they're ones that just kind of spoke to me and made my brain tingle, you know, all those good things. And this was definitely one of them this year. I just remember sitting out in my hammock and reading this book, even though it's super heavy, especially this version, and just enjoying myself so much. So this is on the list. A latecomer this year. This was published in November, and I really enjoyed it. This is The Merge by Grace Walker, and I've recently spoken about this. In this world, there's technology to merge consciousnesses, and people are being encouraged to do this to help with overpopulation, to help with food shortages and housing shortages and things like that. And poor people are encouraged to do this, sometimes even forced to do this if they break the law. Their homes are being taken away because they're taxing them, those who haven't done this. So there's lots of financial incentives to do this. And following a woman and her mother has dementia, and she's slowly losing some of her memories and herself, and they are looking to do this to maybe merge consciousnesses so that it would help with the dementia, and then she could live, her consciousness would be in her daughter's body, and she wouldn't lose her mom, she would still be with her. And they're not sure it's going to work. It's an experimental group, and then they're with these other experimental groups. So there's a young teen boy whose brother's dying of leukemia and terminal, and they want to merge. And there's another woman who's pregnant and she wants to merge with her husband because then they'll have better financial stability, because in this world, if you're going to have children, the taxes on that are really high because of overpopulation and just different things that people that are in this group. So in the first half, we're learning about the procedure and what's going to happen, and they're preparing. And then the second half, it is after some of them have had the procedure. So yeah, I found it to be really interesting. Lots of good concepts and things to talk about in here. It blew me away, actually. I read this as an arc, and I ended up wanting to get my own copy. So that's how you know you like something, when you run out and get yourself a hard copy. So yeah, it's on the list. Next, all the rest of mine are horror, because that's usually, like, I read from all genres, but the ones that usually hit me the hardest, the ones I'm willing to keep on my shelves, are mostly horror. So I have the rest, and the rest are horror. I still wouldn't say they're quite in order. These are definitely the top 5. I'll try to do them in order from the ones I like the most. They're awfully close. So this is The Skull Crow by Grace Daly. This is in my top 10 because I read this as an e-arc and I absolutely loved it. I found this to be sort of like, I want to say Rachel Harrison, but I found this to be a little bit more serious, a little bit more cerebral, but it has sort of that kind of tone to it where it's horror, but it doesn't take itself too seriously. It's a little silly at points. You're not quite sure what to think about it. There's horrifying things happening, but I would say that the tone is a little bit lighter. And I really liked the representation in here. There's a woman dealing with chronic pain. It's chronic pelvic pain, and she's been gaslit a lot by doctors, and she's trying to figure it out. And her mom is missing and presumed dead, so she inherits the house that they lived in, and the relationship between her and her mom was very abusive, emotionally, verbally abusive. And so she has mixed feelings about going back there, but she has this chronic pain, and she's on disability or working to get disability, and she can't pass out this house, so she goes back to clean it out and make it livable for her. And then she notices that there's this scary crow following her around, and weird things start happening in the house. The first thing that happens is there's this picture of Jesus, and she is not a religious person. And she's also, I believe, a lesbian. And so she definitely has sapphic feelings for her friend, and takes it down. And then she notices it's back up again, but she didn't put it back up. So there's a lot of themes of gaslighting in here, and not being sure if you can trust yourself and your mind and your pain and your own brain. So I really enjoyed this one. I like the way it was done. Sometimes when there's a few more that are actually like this, when we're not sure if it's mental health or someone's mind, if they can be trusted, etc. Those books don't always hit with me. They really need to be done sensitively and in a positive way, and they need to hit correctly. And I really liked this one. I recommend this one. As many people are reading it as I think should, and it's a good one. I would say, yeah, this is probably number 4. This is The Lamb by Lucy Rose. This is also surrounding lesbians. Apparently there might be a bit of a theme here. I don't know. But anyway, this is The Lamb. Primarily, this is about a woman and her daughter, and they live in a cottage. This is from the daughter's perspective, and they take in stragglers and lost people, and I forget what they call them. Strays. They call them strays. They take in stray people, and then they get eaten. So they're cannibals, and it's from the daughter's point of view of her dealing with this reality. The mother ends up meeting a stray, but instead of eating her, they end up having this relationship. And it is about the little girl dealing with her mom she's a cannibal. She's not a very nice person. She's not a very good mom. And I just thought this was so heartbreaking. Again, this is literary horror. Most of my horror that I love and resonates with me and gets top billing for me are literary horror. A lot of people I've seen a few people call this boring. I would say that it's very character heavy. It is about this little girl and how she's dealing with the world. And there's a bus driver character in here that needs to be protected at all costs. And I absolutely loved him. And the end of this ripped my heart out a little bit. So again, another story of a mom and a little girl and her not being very nice to her daughter, and having a daughter myself, is just, those kind of stories just really resonate with me. And it was very sad. And I'm sure if I reread this, I would probably cry again. My top 3 now. Number 3 is Odd Body by Rose Keating. I haven't shut up about this one. This is a short story collection by Rose Keating. And it's just, I don't know, it's just so weird. There are a lot of short horror, body horror in here. There is a story about lambs, but they grow and then they have to be cut down, and they scream because they're lambs. And there's a story about a woman who's taking care of her father, who is a worm, an earthworm, has turned into an earthworm. There is a story about an idea in which a woman is being haunted by herself, sort of, kind of. It's a ghost that is trying to get her to kill herself. So, I mean, it's not funny, but it is funny. There's a story about a woman who lays eggs and they hatch into random things. So they're silly and kind of absurd at points, but they also have a lot to say. And I think that if you were to read this with someone else, it would be fun to try to figure out exactly what is going on. And it's definitely 100% rereadable. This is another one that I got an ARC of that I ended up buying, and I love when that happens. It's so nice when you read something on NetGalley that just makes you fall in love with it, because it's really sad when you have to write a review that's not so good. So this is Odd Body by Rose Keating. I highly recommend if you like weird lit ficky type horror. Okay, we have 2 more left, and these, I don't know which one is my top one, so these are probably pretty interchangeable. This is Tear by Erica McKean. I love this book. I love everything about this book. I just reread it over the last week, and I was reading excerpts of it to my husband, who, this is not his thing, but he was even like, ooh. So this follows Frances, and Frances is going through sort of a dissociative episode. She lives in a basement, and the people who she lives with are also students at this college where Frances is attending, and they're almost set to graduate, busy with their finals and things. And Frances is in the basement, and she is very depressed. She's having a dissociative episode, and she slowly believes that she's losing her mind. She is losing her mind, and she believes that she's locked in this basement. She's tried the door, but has she tried the door? And is it locked? She doesn't remember there being a lock on that door, etc., etc. So you just slowly watch as she is losing herself, and then she hears scratching on the wall, and we don't know if that's in her head or not. Then, you know, there's a hole in the wall, and etc., etc. I don't want to give too much away. This is surrounding mental health foremost, but also the harms of being gaslit by a friend that she has, her only friend, and her mother, who is very much, has a lot of mental health problems herself, and she does not have a lot of support. Frances doesn't have a lot of support in her life. Her father's largely absent, and her grandfather tells her these really creepy stories that stay in her mind. And it just talks about the dangers of not having a support system, and you know, people, when they have these horrible bouts with mental illness, if they don't have someone checking up on them, what could happen. And it's incredibly bleak and incredibly sad and incredibly well done. The first half is from Frances's perspective, and then the second part we get a switch, and you get more perspectives from people in her life. And then in the last bit, there's another change of perspective, which is also really interesting. This is horror though, so there is definitely some creepy, grotesque, awful things that happen. So just know that it's definitely lit fic horror, and it is amazing. It's by Erica McKean. I think I probably said that. It is called Tear, according to, but I also think that it is Tear. Like, I think that this name was chosen on purpose because it could be tear, as in it's so sad, and, you know, depression, and it's awful, and then tear because it's also violent and awful and things that happen. So this is very, 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 very good. More people need to read it. I read it because of Sarah from Wicked Reading, so shout out to her. Thank you so much for recommending it to me. I picked up Erica McKean's other book, Cicada Summer, and I'm looking forward to trying that out as well. And I just reread this. I don't know if I said that, and it held up fabulously. So, and last but not least, this one. People who are on my Instagram or who have talked to me at all will know that my favorite book of the year is Sour Cherry by Natalia Theodorou, I believe is how you say their name. And this is essentially, which I didn't realize when I started reading it for some reason. It's a Bluebeard retelling, and it starts as this boy is born and his childhood, and then it moves to him and his wives. It's about the cycle of abuse. It's about women not being able to leave. It's about women when they try to leave. But it's just so beautifully written, and I loved it. And it's somewhat confusing because it's about this woman telling a story to someone. You're not sure what part of the story is just a story and what part is real. It can be a little bit confusing at times, but I just thought it was so beautifully written. I do a few quotes from my favorite book of the year, Sour Cherry. It says, "The ghosts won't meet my eyes. They know this story. All women know it. How it started, how it ends." Also this one. "But I need you to hear the rest now, before your path is set, before you two become a photograph of a boy in a shoebox against the background of a castle's ruins." One more. It says, "Something seized his heart then, because yes, he did have a heart, the terror that no one would ever truly love him because he simply wasn't worthy of love. And yet he thought, maybe the next one would love him enough. It could be nice, this life with him. No, not nice. It could be lovely, wonderful even. And doesn't that make everything worse?" So highly recommend you pick up Sour Cherry. It is excellent. I need more people to read it so I could talk about it with them, and I also need to reread this as well because it was just so good. So I recommend you pick it up if you enjoy the kinds of books I've been talking about. And I mean, look at that cover. It's stunning. I love it. Love it so much. So yeah, those are my top 10 books of the year. Let me know what your top books of the year are. Have you read any of these? I would love to know. And talk about it in the comments. So thank you so much for watching, and subscribe if you wanna, and we'll see you next time. Bye.